Welcome to what we call Smart Segments, second workshop. Just the goals for today, we want to help you get more value out of Wheelhouse immediately. So we do expect you to leave this workshop not with a pitch, but with oh, here's a really practical way I can use Wheelhouse today. Some of you might already be using segments. It's a feature we introduced, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. More than meets the eye. So even folks who are using it, we will probably show you some pretty advanced tricks, and then we're going to want to get your feedback because there's a lot of other places we could go with this functionality. So excited to explore that with you today. This is a test in an approach to ongoing education. We really appreciate you all showing up to learn with us. We recognize our platform has a lot of capabilities, and we do try to ship a lot of new things. So this is an experiment that hopefully allows you to stay really informed on what we're trying to build for you all and often with you all. So we appreciate you coming. And we truly will want to hear how you want the platform to evolve. And we'll probably start with segments, but if you have other feedback, we'll welcome that at the end of today as well. Before we go any further, Keegan, do you want to say a quick hello? Introduce yourself. I think you probably know a lot of the folks here, but maybe you can just quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey everyone, thanks for showing up today. I'm Keegan, revenue manager and part of the onboarding team here at Wheelhouse. I've been with Wheelhouse almost 2 years now, I guess, yeah, over a year and a half at this point, and been doing revenue management for almost 8 years. So yeah, real excited to learn with you all today and yeah, looking forward to it.
If you have not met Keegan yet, good news. He's going to be teaching for part of the day. He has taught. Keegan, were you a math teacher before? Was that what?
Yeah, I actually have my master's in teaching for math.
Okay, so
So
we've got a true professional teacher here today as opposed to me, and he'll be guiding us through the first part of today's build session. Quick classroom quick hits. Yes, we're going to build together. We talked about that. If you do have a question, again, we kind of like this as not a webinar, but a chance you can raise a hand in Zoom. You can pop a question in the chat. We'll get to it. And that will cause us, if it's a question that we think the whole group can learn from, we're going to want to explore that with you. So don't hold back. If you need help with something more larger, more specific, Megan, we have a breakout room or?
We'll get one set up right now.
Okay, we're going to get a breakout room set up. That means if we're moving too fast at any point and you're still, hey, I'm trying to get X, Y, or Z to work, pop into that breakout room and we'll have people there to help you. Okay, and then you'll probably get help for a minute or two, and then you can pop back into the main room at any time. Okay. The agenda today, we're just give you a little bit of the why of segments, the kind of a fun backstory on this, which we'll cover a little bit too. And then we'll get right to building. So we'll talk about metrics. A lot of you know metrics really well, but it's a always evolving aspect of our site. So we'll start there with some foundation building, then we'll quickly get to segments, using them for groups. Then we'll talk about using segments for a more advanced setting, which is workflows. And we'll talk about segments on the portfolio page. And we actually just made the call to switch these around just a little bit. So there we go. And then feedback coming next. We're going to want to hear from y'all. So why segments? We hope today you're going to learn something, of course, that's going to improve your revenue performance. There's a bunch of ways you can actually do this. And some of the non-obvious things, we actually think segments are going to show you a way potentially to open up more nights for sale. Definitely able to, should you have owners you serve, delight them with better, more precise owner comms. That'll eventually actually drive retention as well. Definitely increasing you and your team's productivity. And even managing developing new teammates. There's a lot of functionality that can emerge from this feature. And we'll try to show why today. That's certainly part of the goal. Continuing a little bit of the why on segments is we really believe speed matters. Wheelhouse is not a consumer app. We're not trying to get you to spend all day on Wheelhouse. We actually want to see you get in and be able to do your job really fast and effectively. So we think about the speed at which you're able to get your job done is really, really important. Right? And generally also on Wheelhouse, we want to help accelerate your portfolio growth. When we think about accelerating your portfolio growth, yes, we think about driving your revenue. Also, increasingly, we're looking at ways where we can really help you with owner retention, property acquisition, many parts of kind of portfolio growth is important for us to see that we're helping you with, right? And when we think about the broader value prop that Wheelhouse, we believe, has started to tip into with dynamic sets, we think of segments as helping you, yes, on the pricing strategy, yes, on benchmarking, understanding how your portfolio is performing, and definitely on the owner comps and retention. And there's some other parts as well, but that's probably what we'll get to today. And really, as you all know, your portfolio has a lot of data, right? When you're looking at, should you have a number of properties with us, when you look at all those properties and 500 days in the future and all the different min price and max price and the different settings you can have involved, there's a lot of data you need to keep track of to do effective revenue management. And the hard part is your data is changing every single day. You know, yesterday is no longer for sale, and you might have gotten bookings. Hopefully you got bookings, and all of a sudden your calendar is different and your strategy might have evolved. So you have to keep track of a lot of data constantly. The goal of segments is to help you manage your dynamic portfolio more effectively, right? Really staying up to date on the most important aspects of your portfolio, how you're doing, what you might need to change and adjust. And yes, segments are just a set of saved filters. It is that simple. However, when you start to combine them with all the metrics, again, where we're going to start today, reviewing just the metrics you have at your disposal, they start to become a lot more interesting. And in fact, when we set out to build segments, which started as a hackathon, it's a 2-day hack project from 2 of our teammates, we did not expect some of the functionality to emerge that has emerged. It was not obvious to us until we started using it, where we found all these interesting ways that teams could actually accelerate a lot of their work through this kind of interesting combination of filters and metrics that are filterable. Okay. Don't worry, we're going to go through all this slowly once we build together. Okay. And really a great place to end today. If you're new to segments, we're going to get you to the quote unquote the beginner mode today, where you're just going to be able to use segments to have really effective dynamic groups, really effective groups for you to be able to move through your portfolio faster, to create, evaluate, and edit strategies. At worst today, you will leave knowing a faster way to use Wheelhouse. At best, you're going to start to tip into, and we'll get here, and this will be recorded, starting to use segments to drive potentially novel, or at least accelerated additional work outside of Wheelhouse. So that's where we're tipping into workflows, where you'll be able to use the information you learn from segments to power things that help drive your business forward. Okay. So we'll go from groups to powering workflows. For example, a segment we'll probably see today, it will make it very easy for you to see all the listings that didn't book in the last 2 weeks. That might sound easy, but because it's dynamic, it means every single day, a segment you set up can be showing you just show me the properties that didn't book in the last 14 days. It's always living, right? It's a dynamic filter. A segment can easily, in one click, show me all the properties that are hitting min prices too often. And that too often is definable by you, right? We'll find metrics that will help you figure out what is too often for you for particular properties. And again, that a property could have hit 3 min prices yesterday, and we want to alert you to that. So a segment is always listening to the performance of your portfolio and keeping you up to speed on what you need to look at and potentially address. There's also, turns out they're infinite. You can have a segment that shows you fast booking properties that have a lot of blockings. Okay, so these are just some examples, and we'll talk about all of them in a little more detail. So today's workshop agenda, and we are obviously moving towards the actual build. We're going to go in, we're going to revisit your metrics. We're going to start there. We're going to get everyone grounded on that page. So all of this will be done on the portfolio page, pricing page. Then we're going to create a segment together. Keegan will show us a few examples first, and then we'll build one together. You don't have to build, but we certainly invite you to. Then I moving this around. We'll go show you bringing segments across the portfolio or performance page. Apologies, something you may be familiar with, but we'll show you some more tricks there. And then we're hoping to get to workflows. We expect to get to workflows today. So with that, quickly, any questions before we hand it over to Keegan to dive into starting to walk through metrics or anything? Anything in the chat come up yet? Okay, excellent. Nothing's come up. Keegan, no pressure. Take it away. Let's do it.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
We can.
Cool. So if you're building along, when you log in, you're of course taken to the dashboard here. For the sake of building, let's head to pricing settings. So just click the pricing drop down, head over to settings. And then first, like Andrew said, let's talk about the filter options we have here, because like he said, at the core, segments are really ways to chain together different filters, whether those are static filters or dynamic filters. So on the top left, if you're not familiar, there's the filter button here. Really, the way our filters are broken up is like in 4 sections, basically. So we have listing features at the top. So your basics like bathroom, bedrooms, beds, all that stuff. Listing status. So, who is the admin of your listing? If you have multiple different accounts on your team, whether they're automated, things like that. And then at the bottom is where we get into metrics, right? So now we have historical metrics, basically looking backwards for any of these. Like I can look at my occupancy in the last 7 days. And then the last section is future metrics. So looking ahead for all the metrics there. So it's really, the filters are broken down into 4 sections. So, and this is where you basically choose and start to chain together filters to make segments. So, like Andrew mentioned, the first start I would recommend is grouping your properties. So if you have your own segments or groupings within your portfolio that you commonly use, and you're finding yourself constantly going to the filter button, finding, that tag, and then going back to the filter button, finding the bedroom button, that's a lot of clicks, and you're chaining together multiple filters constantly throughout the day or the week. That is a really good indication you should create a segment for that group. If you're constantly using it to change pricing or report on that group, absolutely should create a segment for that. So that's really the first easy one that we'll want to build together. So a grouping. Now this will look different for everyone, right? A common example would be a market and then bedroom type, right? You can choose one of your markets. If you have multiple markets, one of your bedroom counts. If you don't have multiple markets, hopefully you have some tags with different neighborhoods, different submarkets, plus a bedroom count or a listing type. It could be all of my condos in this neighborhood, or my 2-bed condos in Nashville. So this will look different for everyone. I've created my own preset segment, so I'll just show you an example here. I have my Nashville market as a filter, and then my bedroom, 1 bedroom as a filter here. So I've chained them together. So I'll give people a couple of seconds to catch up and choose some filters if you're following along. But again, this will look different for everyone. Once you've selected your filters, you'll want to save that as a segment, because when you come back to the page, if you don't save this as a segment, it won't be there. Those filters will be gone. So real briefly on how to actually save a segment. Once you have multiple filters up here, you'll click the segment drop down. And at the very bottom, it says save new segment. So you click save to new segment. You want to name it. And so in this case, I'm doing a market filter, and I highly recommend using prefixes, because as you start using it more, you're going to have more and more segments. You want them all to be, sorted well. So for example, I would name this market. I just shortened the name, market, and then Nashville 1 beds. And that's my segment name. I've already done this, but if I hadn't, I would say save new segment. So groupings are really, really helpful, saves you time, and then you'll see later on performance page how they're really helpful. And again, use prefixes as you start to build these out. So any
Keegan,
question? Yeah.
Could you quickly just let's open your segments drop down again. So you've got
Yes.
You mentioned prefixes. So you're using MRKT, you have a bunch of different markets. You want to create some fast views here, kind of slices of your portfolio. So what do you have? You have Nashville, you have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, three, etc. What else do you
Yep.
have here for?
So market wise, yeah, I got Nashville. I have my Baltimore 1 and 2 beds. I have Mordor. I have the Shire. I have property, fruit farms here as well. So you can, definitely go outside of just market definitions. Um, but this makes it super quick, right? Because as you saw before, I had to click filter, go to the market tab, go to bedroom tab. But now I can work through and look at my Baltimore 1 beds on pricing settings, or I could do this from the calendar real quick. Those look good. Maybe I make adjustments, whatever it is. I can then move on to my Nashville 1 beds. And I didn't have to click. That would have been 4 clicks versus 2 and save me a lot of time there.
Cool.
And the reason I recommend prefixes is because you can see I have a lot of segments here. The ones at the top are kind of metric based or just different. They're not using just like listing attributes like the market and tags. Those are using some of the metrics ones. So I have named them differently so they're in their own spot. By default, this is just sorted alphabetically. So prefixes can help you with that.
Yeah. And if you don't have prefixes, you can rename your segments at a later date. So
Yep.
if you just want to save one today or explore one today, you can go edit the details and you'll be able to update those names at any point.
Pretty easy. Just on the segment, there's 3 little dots. You click those, click edit details, and you can edit the name. One use case I did want to show with the groupings, other than performance page, which we'll get to later, is onboarding new listings, right? So let's say I have some new listings. I'm gonna reset all my filters, right? Typically when you don't have any filters set, new properties show up at the top of your listing pricing settings page, right? But let's say I have some new listings that have come on board in the Shire, right? So now right now I do have a segment for the Shire, but that's the old 3 listings that were already in there. So what I want to do for the new properties, these 2 here, is make sure they have the tag Shire because that's what my segment is using, right? So let's say I have these 2 new properties. I'll select them. I'll add them to the Shire tag. And now when I go and use the segment for the Shire, they should show up there. Oh, I need to update this too because those are actually not 6 and 7 bedrooms. The new properties we got are smaller. I've added those to the segment, so I'm going to save it. And this time I'm just going to save those changes I made to the existing segment. So just updated it to have the new listings. Those new listings are now within the Shire segment. And what's nice is I can take the settings for some of these properties within the Shire and copy them to the new property. So if I'm onboarding new listings, now that they're in the segment and are tagged as so, I can just take the setup or customizations I have for the Shire. I know that, their seasonality is pretty extreme and I made some adjustments, or maybe I know the base prices need to be adjusted there. I can copy over those customizations to the new property. So using these for the onboarding flow can also help once you've set up properties to do so. So that's just one example of groupings and how they can help. Any questions on that? I kind of quickly went over that just because it's pretty, I think pretty straightforward. But any questions?
Hannah had a quick question in the chat. Can you add properties individually to the segment, or do you have to use tags and filters?
That's a good question. So it depends. So that's actually a really good question. So let's go back to the Shire example. Since the tag was used for this segment, it is going to be more manual on my part because I need to update the tag for the listings. But let's say, let's take one of my segments. Let's take Nashville 2 beds, right? This segment is made up of bedrooms and market filter. Now, these are these are listing attributes that are automatically applied to a new listing, right? Versus a tag is something I need to set up because it's customization. So with this segment, let's say I onboarded some new 2 bedrooms in Nashville. Those would automatically be brought into this segment because these filters are dynamic meaning the listing has those attributes automatically applied. Does that answer your question, Hannah?
Yeah, I think, and the if you wanted to add an individual listing, you'd probably create a segment based around a tag as opposed to a listing status. And then each listing you added that tag to would flow into the segment. Right.
Yep.
So
Like the Shire, yeah.
it's kind of a dynamic, really what you're creating at this stage. And again, this is kind of the first level of segments, is just an ability to have specific or dynamic groups. All right. So you could have a group that always is just the same, tied to certain characteristics. You could tie it to a characteristic in a tag. So like a Florida, say a Florida property, or pick a market, Orlando property, with luxury. So luxury is a tag you would apply. You could create a luxury Orlando set of properties that would be a mix of an attribute and something that you're creating or giving to that property.
Yeah.
And this is really still using segments as a kind of basic grouping functionality, but a faster way to slice and dice your portfolio.
Yep. So grouping wise, really just think about your daily and weekly practices from a revenue management perspective. Internally, how do you group your portfolio? Do you have quality designations like Andrew mentioned, like luxury, high, low, whatever it is? Is it all two beds in a neighborhood? Those are great considerations for group segments as groups, right? David has a similar question. It really depends on what filters you've used for the segment, David. So if you're using something like a tag, whereas something I need to personally go and update, and I have to go to the listing and add the tag, then yes, you need to add the tag for it to appear in the segment. If it's dynamic filters, meaning like a market designation, or the bedroom count, then no, it would just automatically flow into that segment for you.
Keegan, why don't we quickly show? So let's say you remove the bedroom here
Yep.
and you wanted to now bring a tag in here and update this filter. So let's
Yeah.
run the segment. So you'd come to filter.
So yeah, let's say I want to add as part of the segment a tag. So remember, segments are chaining of filters, right? And tags just another filter. Let's say I wanted to create a Gulch neighborhood segment, right? So it's a neighborhood within Nashville. I'll type in, and I've added this as a tag, right? So this Wheelhouse isn't automatically pulling in like the Gulch neighborhood. This is a custom tag I've applied to my listings. I'm updating this as a new segment called the Gulch. So I'm going to go to segments, click save new. I'm going to call this maybe a neighborhood, the Gulch, right? I'll save as a new segment. And now not only did I have my market tags for Nashville, I have that new segment for the Gulch. Now, let's say I've onboarded a new property. Let's pretend that this is a new listing. So I just removed that Gulch tag from one of my properties. I would need to make sure to find that listing. And like I mentioned earlier, well, the easiest way to do this is to reset your filters, and your new listings that are new to Wheelhouse will show up usually at the top, right? So you would just find that listing and then click in and add that tag to that new listing. Once you do, you can go back to your the Gulch neighborhood segment, and it's automatically in there for me because I added the tag. Cool. Any questions, comments on that for grouping?
Luis,
Can you guys hear me okay?
we can, yeah.
Awesome. Is there any plans for the future to expand filters? For example, days live, right? Is an easy one. If I wanted to have a segment of my new listings, can I filter that down and not have to rely on tags?
Yes. So we're almost there. So we have a column for creation date, but not a filter. So Just
Got it.
I'll take a step back. We have filters on the left side. We have columns on the right side.
Mhm.
Columns are almost the same breakout as the filters. You'll notice there's 4 sections: listing features, status, historical, and future
Mhm.
metrics. We have a creation column, but I'd say yes, we want to add that as a filter because you've brought up a really, really good idea for a segment. If you could just create a segment that is
Yep.
dynamically changing for your newly onboarded listings, that'd make your life way easier, right? So um,
100%.
yeah, there
Great
the
ad.
limitation here is, just so you know, this is creation date of the listing within Wheelhouse and not your PMS. So tangent side note,
Yeah.
but wanted to just mention that for you. But you can pull up this column and just sort by it. So you can bring your newly added listings to the top right now, but not a
Fantastic.
segment.
Awesome. Yep.
Great call. That's partly why we're here. Keep the good questions coming.
Yeah, I love that.
Keegan, we'll have to go a little faster, but I'd love to go next to go. Let's talk a little bit of the calendar view.
Yeah.
And let's start to bring some metrics into the equation.
Perfect segue. So, obviously I've come prepared with other segments ahead of time so we could save some time. I'm gonna pull up one and just show you what it is. So I have a segment I've called low season min price occurrence. The filters I've used are now not just listing attributes, but metric based filters. So again, at the bottom of the filters section, historical and future metrics, I have filtered to show listings in the next 3 weeks or 21 days that have under 50% occupancy and are also in the next 21 days hitting their minimum price at least half the time. So hitting their minimum price 10 to 21 of those 21 days. And so now I have a dynamic group. Every day this will get updated with the set of listings in my portfolio that fall into this bucket. And the reason I might do this is, let's say I'm in my low season for my market, and I know just demand has been low, market conditions year over year are tough. And so I'm going to use this to find the listings that are struggling, but at maybe a higher minimum than I'm comfortable with keeping them at. So I can use this, maybe on a weekly basis, maybe like a Monday sort of thing to do, early in the week, basically. And then I come straight to the calendar and see like, okay, all of these listings that have asterisks on them are hitting their minimums. What I might opt to do is select my dates for the next 3 weeks. Let's go to the 14th. First, what I might opt to do is make sure all of these listings are hitting the minimums. This is a very extreme example, so I've just decreased all the rates. Oh, sorry, I need to select more than one listing. My bad. I'm going to decrease all the rates for my listings on the calendar. And then from here, I know for this specific use case, I just want to push for occupancy. So while I'm at it, I'm going to use this segment to adjust my minimum prices down 10% using this bulk adjustment feature on the calendar. Pretty cool. So now for the next 3 weeks, I'm pushing my rates down below their minimums, and I use that segment to basically do this on a Monday. I can push for occupancy in the low season. Very quickly pulls up that dynamic set, and then I use the bulk features to update the listings. I breezed through kind of the calendar functionality because that's not the main focus of today, but some of you may have already seen that. Hopefully you've used it. If not, check out the pricing calendar. And we have support too if you guys want help on how to do that. So again, that was based off of metrics, right? So that low season min price occurrence, every day, roughly every 24 hours, Wheelhouse is pulling in your new reservation data and your market data as well. Your listings are updated dynamically based on these filters. So day by day, this group is going to be different, right? Or week by week in this case, because this is a Monday use case, something I do on Mondays. Couple other options. And these are going to be in the slide deck too. We have them at the end of the presentation with what filters I'm using here. So if you all want that, let us know. Another one I've done here is low production and low occupancy. So low occupancy is, again, pretty straightforward. I'm looking at all listings in the next 60 days that have under 50% occupancy. The low production part of this means I'm looking at properties that haven't been booked in up to 14 days. So I may opt to make this longer, but in at least, or sorry, at most, I guess 2 weeks. So all these properties here, I think this is 59 of my portfolio. Not looking too hot for me right now in my fake portfolio, but this can key me in on any struggling properties. Maybe I need to make rate adjustments. Maybe my base prices are too high, whatever the reason is. But this is kind of showing me low production, low occupancy coming up for my properties.
Quick question to folks. Has anyone here built a segment either this morning or before tied to a metric? Rebecca, what's a segment you built?
I have a low occupancy filter that I put on. So I keep checking that as my, like, I call them TLC units, the ones that I want to watch. So I watch those every week and hopefully that I can get them out of that segment.
And are you just applying an occupancy filter there? Is that a market and occupancy or a metric plus a tag? Or tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'll use the filter of my occupancy for the next 60 days, just like how Keegan has up there, so that I can continue to watch that group because I'm always want to be concerned. I don't necessarily have it go as far as 50. I kind of do the 0 to 25, just given them depending on the market. Some markets that can be a little bit more. So I do kind of have my bottom up units that I focus on and be able to kind of segment it out that way. Then I also have some different segments based on like private pools or ski in, ski out, like just different things that bedroom counts don't necessarily aren't my biggest concern as terms of like area or amenity, because it can do the bedroom count filter pretty easily. So this is just taking it another step. Is kind of how I use it.
Great.
Love it.
Keegan, can I share 2 other filters?
Absolutely. I will stop sharing.
So there, and really this is where we recognize today we might be opening up there's a kind of a lot, right? You can see how many, we have so many metrics and you can open up any individual metric and put in a date range. You also might know we have Teams functionality, which means I can assume my listings can be assigned to teammates. And in this case, if I can be looking at, okay, well, how are Amelia, my teammates' properties, how are Amelia's properties that we've collectively tagged at risk together? This is going to show me all of those properties. If I wanted to look at Amelia's properties, I'll just strip this out, that had adjusted occupancy in the next 30 days of 0 to 30%. It's going to update. And Keegan just showed a pretty powerful thing, right? I could now go and save this. I could say, hey, I no longer want to use a tag. I just want to use occupancy. And I could go save and override the segment, right? And once you've done that, Keegan showed that you still have the ability to kind of move around without saving it. I can go and update all the data here. And you can use the segments as a fast way to cut to a view and then fine tune that view more, right? But for folks who have teammates, I really like the combination of a filter that combines a teammate and some performance, especially if a new team member has joined your team. You might want to just really be talking to them about their revenue strategy. So you might want to collectively say, these are the at-risk properties. These are the ones we're going to start our meeting with, for example. But teammates combined with a metric can be kind of fun or interesting or valuable. You can also use a listing, kind of a calendar status. So I would encourage everyone today to build a fast booking. Should you manage properties on other people's behalf? A fast booking, but blocked. Okay. In this case, you'll see what I'm looking at is this property is booked or is blocked how many times in the next 180 days. My fake calendars do not have blocked days. So this is, I have to go 0 to 180. It's a little bit of an extreme. And then I'm chaining that together by showing me the properties that have booked. I actually want to see the properties that are booking really quickly. And the reason I want to have this view is if a property is booking really quickly and you have a lot of upcoming blocked nights, a pattern we see a lot for property managers is their owners will set up blocks 12 months in advance. And maybe they've realized they're not actually going to use the property for those 2 weekends or those 2 weeks or whatever it may be. And in some ways, if you were to get a note, and we'll get to this at the very end of this, I'm going to hand it back to Keegan in a second here. If you were to get them a note and say, your property has booked a lot in the last 2 weeks, are you sure you don't want to open up those other nights for sale? It's a way you can start fine tuning. Where's your portfolio overperforming where you might want to try to open up more nights for sale? So again, these combination of metrics, we've seen super creative combinations of metrics, and then many more will emerge. But when you combine these, they can really drive a lot of nuanced ways to serve your owners, to optimize your portfolio, to refine your strategy. Okay, so I love the fast booking with blocked. And again, we're going to share out a doc with all of these. Just a preview. It'll be here. It'll be public for you all. And we'll come back to some of my favorite filters or segments, sorry, in a minute when we talk about workflows. Keegan, why don't we hop into bringing those segments across to the performance page?
Yes.
And we know we're throwing a lot at you. We appreciate you all sticking with us today.
Yeah. So if I hop over to the performance page. In the top right, there's a little drop down. This is where I can change what is being aggregated on the charts here and at the reservations table at the bottom. You can just do your whole portfolio and then filter, normally like you would on the pricing pages. But I also have access to those same segments we were just looking at, right? So this is where, like personally, for like those of you that are managing larger portfolios, especially with multiple markets, segments help speed up your reporting on this page, because now I can, come in on my Monday or Wednesday, whenever I'm doing my reporting, and quickly just select, my Baltimore 1 and 2 beds. I only have 2 properties here, so it's not super interesting, but however you do your reporting, maybe I'm doing like a daily book nights report with the average daily rate, right? And I want to take this and export it. Cool. I can then move on to my next market, right? Mordor, right? I want to hop in here, see how these listings are doing, see how they're booking. So it's just very quick to use these groups that I've created to work through the different segments of my portfolio, analyze, pickup, cool, in Nashville, we're actually booking for Easter weekend, or starting to. Looks like 1 property booked here. The ADR is like 206. Like, okay, that's a bit lower than what I expected. Maybe I go check this out for that segment, see, how we're being priced. Am I discounting too much? Whatever it is. I can then pull this, whatever reporting you're doing, let's pretend I'm using this chart, export it, and then hop over to, my super basic reporting doc here and throw in my image, right? Leave my notes, hop back over, move on to my next segment, right? So it just kind of makes the workflow, especially if you're doing the like same segments week after week, or multiple times a week. The groupings really help speed things up at the end of the day. So a lot less clicks. If you've used this page a lot, you can obviously take this a step further and add comparisons between segments, right? So I can go and compare my Nashville 2-bed segment to my Nashville 1-bed segment and see like, okay, how do these differ from a booking window perspective, ADR, whatever, right? And start doing more with the performance page. But it's pretty quick because I already have those segments created. I'm not going to spend as much time as I want on the performance page because I love this page, but it's not the main focus. But I just wanted to showcase a bit how you can use those segments and bring them over here to the page.
And Keegan, can we just to keep it simple for a second, let's strip out the overlays and can we zoom in on a weekly level? And I'd love to run that. I want to see that segment of the 1 bedroom versus the 2 bedrooms.
Oh yeah.
And what might you do if you saw, so these like actually like they're booking fairly similarly. Um,
Oh, hold up. I did the wrong one. My bad.
okay.
That's the same segment versus the same
Okay.
segment.
And can we zoom in again? I know that we probably need to have a 3-day view. Okay, cool. So let's say you saw this difference emerging here. What would you be thinking about doing with that information?
So, obviously these are hypothetical, right? So conclusions here might be and what we're seeing might be a little wonky. I would say in this case, obviously we have much more booking activity for the 1 beds, but we have almost over double the number of 1 bedrooms than we do 2 beds. So I may, instead of book nights in this case, look at occupancy because that helps keep things more relative. And you can start drawing interesting conclusions. Like for whatever reason, early November, I'm not booking for my 2 beds at all. But my 1 beds are over 50% occupied. That's kind of weird. Don't know why that would be happening. Maybe there's blocks on the calendar, something like that. Um, we're peaking early November again on the Sunday for, 2 beds versus the 1 beds. But other than that, they're kind of in line occupancy wise. And as I would expect, my ADR for my 2 bedrooms, the dash pink line, is more often than not higher than my 1 beds. I would typically, expect that. So yeah, you can start drawing conclusions like that. Obviously, you can use these charts differently. You can look at them from a monthly view, weekly view, different time frames. I could reset the zoom and start looking ahead into the future if I had bookings. But yeah, that's kind of a quick just analysis you could do here.
And well, it's not the focus of the today. You all might know about the overlay functionality. You can too, is the average per listing, is that just working for revenue so far? Or is that, I think it's
Yeah,
just for revenue so far.
yeah. So
But you could, when you have different segments, if you toggled over to revenue, you'll be able to adjust by listing count to get more of a balanced understanding of your portfolio.
yeah, so in this case, on average, actually, my 1 beds are doing really well, or maybe my 2 beds are not doing well, because on average, monthly revenues are about the same. Although I do again have double the amount of 1 bed, so that's probably playing a factor in this hypothetical scenario. But yeah.
Great. Okay, all last section. Thank you all for spending time too. So I'm going to grab the screen again and we'll go back and again, when we think about segments, first we think about kind of at the initial level, can we speed you up on Wheelhouse by creating better groups for you, more dynamic views? When you bring metrics in, can we make those groups always up to date? So can you have a group tied to a metric where if you want to say, hey, show me what hasn't booked in the last 7 days, you always have that. You always have that available, or just what was hitting its minimum price. Whereas Wheelhouse telling me to drop rates and is hitting my minimum price. That is kind of more like a dynamic group, right? There's static groups and more dynamic groups. And then the part that we are kind of most excited about is starting to stretch into how can we save you time outside the Wheelhouse platform, right? So I'm going to, again, the view that I have here is a fast booking, but blocked view. This is showing me all my properties with blocked nights coming up that have booked a lot in the last 14 days. And again, I could booked a lot. I could define this in any way I want, right? Apparently nothing's booked more than 30. There's probably a few that booked 20. So this is a dynamic view, right? The reason I like this view is, yeah, I might want to take action on it, but that action might actually involve talking to the owner. And so when we think of segments as the foundation of what we call workflows, it toggles into, okay, you've found that information. What are we going to do now? All right. So this doc, which I'm going to put in chat, and it should be publicly viewable to you all. is the start of a doc that we'll keep updating, but it's really showing you down to the email you could write. You'd want to change it to make your own voice, but you're welcome to steal it. In the case of if I had a bunch of fast booking but blocked properties, and again, I've got the filters here, and I've got the workflow goal here, you can steal this email. But imagine if this email came in. Hi, Rebecca. I just want to let you know that your property is booking really well. In the last 14 days, you booked 20 nights at X amount of revenue. And you've got 20 of the next 90 nights blocked. With a fast selling property, I just want to check in with you. Are you sure those nights are still not available, or would you like to open up some of those nights for sale? So, no worries if your travel plans remain the same, yada, yada, yada. Your best property manager, right? We see segments and the right segments set up for your Monday morning, whether it's your properties are overperforming or underperforming or any other view of your portfolio, as starting to power that workflow. And you can literally, like, if any of these are valuable, steal them. Steal these emails, okay? When we think about segments as helping you scale your portfolio, we're really looking at, can we make it easier to be the best revenue manager, property manager ever? Another one, the min price occurrence flag, right? So I've got min price occurrence here. And now I'm saying, okay, show me all the properties that have low occupancy. So occupancy in the next 90 days is 0 to 50. Obviously, I can change in these numbers that are hitting their min price occurrence too often. So that's where Wheelhouse is saying, hey, we'd be bringing you down more if we could. You got a min price. And sometimes that's your decision to have that min price. And sometimes it's an owner's decision or another teammate's decision. And sometimes you just want to have that quick view of all those properties that don't have occupancy in there. You might be willing to take a lower price right now. You might want to send the owner a note that said, I just want to let you know that your property has hit the minimum price that we established 15 times in the next 90 days or whatever it is, right? We'll never go below that price without your permission. However, because we're seeing, the market pull down a little bit, we just wanted to make sure that was still the right decision for you. Take the email, if helpful at all. The segment should give you the list of 20 properties that you need to act on. Eventually, we'd obviously love for you to have that email right here and you just click send. That's 6 months away. But really, when we're thinking of advanced use of segments and combining metrics in the ways that you all are noting, is to better inform your team meetings, your own decisions, your owner conversations, etc. And it's not just the act of discovering, it's like, okay, well, what do you do next, right? So here's another example where you might tag a property new owner, or soon we'll have that filter for the creation date on listings. You might have, especially with those new owners, you might want to be extra wary about their properties not performing. And like, imagine the new owner getting a note very quickly saying, hey, we just want to let you know that your occupancy is lower than we'd like. We're still doing a little bit of price discovery on your property. Is it okay to change? We'd recommend X. That's the type of email you want to be able to send. We want to make it faster for you to send it. Or the better one, new owner, your property's selling really fast. Hey, we just want to let you know we're taking action. We just increased your prices for the high season a little bit because you're selling better than we expected. Great job. Thanks so much for bringing your property into our portfolio. Lots you can build, right? None of this was expected. Truly, this came out of a hackathon. We see, and I think Rebecca, one of the Rebeccas, Ron again, you already named something I love, which is right now, Wheelhouse has this annoying limit, which is next 90 days. We're always showing you next. Which is funny because for some of our filters, I believe we do have the ability to choose days since last booking.
It used to.
I'm able to go put in a date range for some filters. So we'll be able to, suffice to say, we have a UI that we think we could probably bring, but we sure want to make it easy for you to say, hey, from, I think Rebecca, you said from May or so to August, we'll just say, I want to be able to create that date range and see all my properties that are underperforming or overperforming or whatever it may be. So that's a great example of how we want to continue to modify segments, right? That's a little low-hanging fruit. AKA, hopefully it will take us 6 weeks. But the sprint's already underway, so a little hard for me to fight for it. But there's other things such as you all might know there's dynamic sets out there. Well, we think you should be able to bring in the metrics from your dynamic set in here. And maybe you want to see properties where show me all my properties where my dynamic set is really booked out and we're not. So there's a kind of a mix of data capabilities that we want to bring here for you to be able to create whatever segments you like and build workflows for your team off of those. Hopefully saving you a ton of time. Okay. So we actually got to our goal. I know we went fast. And we'll share all these slides as well. It'll be public. But just a reminder, some of the, we looked at using listing basics, so bedroom or market or kind of the static aspects of your properties to build groups. We then moved into kind of using listing performance, so metrics to kind of have a dynamic set of properties that you might need to pay a little more attention to for whatever reason, whatever strategy you want to pursue. Your tagging, the ability to tag individual listings, does mean these groups can be based on, again, the property, the kind of the attributes of the properties or whatever properties you ascribe to them, luxury, new owner, at risk, beachfront, whatever it may be. The Gulch, a neighborhood example. We talked about teammates. We talked about you can use kind of aspects of the listing itself. So creation date, well, not quite yet, booked and blocked status, etc. And there's other areas, but we are curious, and we already had a great idea. What other capabilities? Does anyone here have a suggestion or an ask or an idea for what capabilities might allow them to create a really valuable segment? Not to put anyone on the spot, but just curious. David, you got one? Min price occurrence for historical metrics. It's great. Min price occurrence for historical metrics. Okay. Let me just see. Okay, so min price occurrence.
Good one. We have min price, but it's
Right,
for historical,
yeah.
but it's different. It's not what I think
Great
David
add.
wants. Yeah,
Great
it's good.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there? And you can, now's your time too to call out, why don't you have this other filter or whatever? We're listening. With that, we'll quickly close then. So really what's coming next, we've already hinted at some of it. Segments meets dynamic sets. We do think, again, senior listing in comparison to other properties and being able to create views there could be interesting for a lot of reasons. The date range segments, that'll be first. No particular order to this slide. Automations derived from segments. So I think early, maybe end of this year, but early next year, Wheelhouse will have a much better notification alert center. So, if something falls into the segment, you might want to have an alert fire on your dashboard or another place that's helpful. So we think segments can be a really good signal to us of what you're trying to listen to. So yeah, whether it's maybe this one should be higher, right? Alerts tied to segments, and then the automation derived from segments is like, hey, if something falls into the segment, do X, right? If it's less than 50% occupied in the next 30 days, bulk update, drop prices 7%. Type of thing you could build in the future. and workflows tied to segments. Again, we showed kind of the very staticky kind of hacky way. Again, steal the emails, take whatever you want. We'll add more here. Really when we're thinking about segments, we are thinking about empowering those workflows, whether it's on Wheelhouse or off. But we do think like eventually could we just make it easier, one click, etc., to do what you need to do. So we think segments is kind of a predicate step to giving you the organization you need to do those other fun things. With that, obviously we're at time. Sincerely appreciate the questions, the patience, the ideas today. I hope you learned something valuable. Please send feedback if you have it via email or whatever. We will share the recording. We will share the documents we went through today, but the slides and the workflows. And otherwise, appreciate you all building with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Bye.
all.
Bye.
Bye.